Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Essence Show and podcast in the Fuck It Energy series, where we always invite on a beautiful, lovely co-host who is here to share their experience on going with the flow, releasing all of these external hustle, burnout, societal pressures, whatever it is where we're, really trying to force something to create success, and really dive into their story, their shares, their insights on how we can shift into this flow, how we can better take care of ourselves, and how we can really claim the freedom within our own lives. So today I am joined by Danai, a mental health advocate, writer, and content creator. And she has created a mental health platform called Forward Ever, Backward Never, which is so amazing. That's how we initially connected as well. And we're going to dive into a lot of topics today around mental health, the good, the bad, the personal, the collective, all of that. And really also kind of bring to focus like this self-belief in ourselves, because whenever we are striving towards creating success or creating a goal or whatever it is, we so often come up against these roadblocks of self-doubt or questioning as to whether or not this is for us. And all of that stuff is happening in our minds. And of course, especially with the conversation and topic of mental health, it all starts to weave together. So there's a great conversation in here for you today. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Danai and let her give you a little introduction on herself and her journey.
I mean, that was a great introduction. Thank you. It's always so funny thinking, and I'm like, even just coming up with like a bio, and it's like, oh, when you're like a multi-hyphenate or like multifaceted, and like I'm like, maybe I should work on like trying to make it more concise. But then also, I kind of like that I've done a lot of different things. So, yeah. So
Absolutely.
my name is Danai. We connected. I mean, we actually connected through Carson.
We
So
did.
yes, yeah.
Shout
And
out is deserved.
we're like a lot of our mentality was very aligned, and like as soon as I like met you and I looked at you, I was like, yep, I see like a clear alignment. So he was our facilitator,
Yes.
so, more or less, and travel friend for Olivia, and travel friend by proxy for me too. But anyways, so yes, I am a mental health advocate, and that's what the main kind of focus is today. But I'm also a lifestyle writer. I am a content creator. I've used a lot of my brand marketing experience over the last 8 to 9 years to create Forward Ever, Backward Never, which is a platform with a mission to destigmatize and like give space to mental health challenges that people may be going through. So, of course, you know about the big organizations more or less, but Forward Ever, Backward Never is there to be that hub for any intersection of mental health that someone may be facing. And the goal is to democratize it and make it accessible for everyone.
I love that. I'm so curious because honestly, we actually haven't gone into this so much, like on a personal level.
Yeah.
But to hear like a little bit more of that story for you, like what really called you to create this
Mhm.
platform?
Oh,
Because it's so much bigger than just a platform. Like this is your purpose. This is like your heart and your soul goes into this. Exactly. And also like some of the energetics of that journey of like where were you before starting this, like
totally.
again the constructs of like how we need to be showing up and what we need to be doing that often also create so much of this like stress and anxiety, and then like where you moved yourself to now and kind of what that journey looked like.
Yeah, for sure. It's very specific reason. So as I said, I had all this like marketing experience. I've worked closely with designers. I've worked closely in branding and obviously copywriting as a writer as well. So that part of that was like more my professional side, but the more personal side was in 2019, two specific things happened. A conversation with my brother who was having his own mental health challenges, and him and I saying like, hey, let's do something creative together. He's also a creative. He's a video producer and editor. And he ended up taking a outpatient CBT program at Oakville Trafalgar Hospital. So that's cognitive behavioral therapy, and it pretty much changed the trajectory of his life. And prior to that, like talking about especially when you don't have the vocabulary for mental illness or mental
Yeah.
health or addiction or any sort of, like issue that can come up with that within that, say, umbrella of the mental health. It's kind of difficult, like you almost like go into like your brain just goes into haywire because you can't compute it. But at that point when that happened, I was like, oh, like there was a solution. But like think about all the years and all the challenges and the barriers that you had to face to get what you needed. um,
Hmm.
and that kind of inspired that, and like the creative parts of us also inspired that. So that was one thing. And the other was a very, very simple conversation that I had. I have a nephew who's turning 13 this year. He was diagnosed with ADHD when he was like 3. I mean, diagnosed at 3. We knew before, okay? Like, and he's such a well-adjusted kid. He plays professional lacrosse. Like, he's just very, he's like very resolute, very determined kid, funny, just beautiful energy. And he came to, I was living in Toronto, like about, yeah, 4 years ago. And we were walking, so I was Queen West. So they were building the CAMH hospital, which is now there. And beautiful and like great. And he saw like this big sign and he was like, what's CAMH? And I was like, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And he was like, oh, okay. And he's like, so it's like a hospital. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, what's mental health? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, how do I explain this? And
Hmm.
I said, well, mental health is like how happy and healthy your mind functions on a day-to-day basis. And some people just need a little bit more help than others. And this is where people go for that help. And he just looks at me
Mm.
and he goes, oh, like me. And
Oh,
I know, I know. I literally was on Queen Street just like crying. Like
yeah.
it was so pure. But then I also had this moment where I'm like, at the time he was 8, I think. That he was like, he accepted that there's this part of him that needs help, but it does not define him. It does not stop him. Like I'm saying, he's well adjusted, he's confident, he's just the best. So that was a bit of an inspiration to be like, man, I want to be like Jackson. Like I want to be like my nephew. Like, and what a shame as an adult for me and my brother and my sister who grew up in a different generation. So that's like all left to my parents and all left to the family that we were raised in, just didn't have that, say, freedom or access.
Yeah.
And yeah, so anyways, I built it out as like almost like to honor that inner child in me and in everybody and say like there's hope for you because like it's okay if there's a part of you that needs a little bit of help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Sorry.
love that so much.
Thanks.
So many things. I'm like gonna tear up over here because it is just so beautiful. Like the awareness around that. And then also like, I mean, we see this so often, and like this is one of the greatest gifts we can learn from
Mhm.
children, but like there's no judgment. It's
Yeah.
like this is just the way that it is. And like there's like all of these again, like the conditionings that we also take on as we get older and move through life and like start making things mean so many different things. Like
Totally.
that is such a beautiful reminder.
Oh my God.
Um
Hmm.
and to your platform as well, like I love the way that you describe it regarding coming back to your inner child because again, it also I think encompasses so many people who are on the spectrum of mental health because we
Hmm.
all have mental health, so we're all on that spectrum and so it's like there can be something for anybody and
Yeah.
at any level that you're at. And of course, like you said, some people need more help than others, absolutely. But also, kind of like you said, destigmatizing, because as soon as we make it something that like it relates to everyone, we're like, okay, yeah, actually, I maybe don't need this level of help, but I can definitely
Oh,
nurture my inner child this way. And don't we all deserve to nurture our inner children?
that's just it. And that's the whole thing is like when we talk about it like in hyperboles, like I'm fine or I'm like I'm struggling, like or just this kind of this way I feel like then you can, when we put black and white or like very linear binary solutions on things,
Yeah.
it is very isolating. So it's okay. Like I always say, I'm like, I can be super happy one day, but I can also carry sadness within me at the same time.
Yes.
Right. So like so many things can be true at the same time. And I very much live my life in the gray when it comes to stuff like this. And it's just kind of giving people more permission to live in the gray.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that. I love that whole
that's
phrasing.
great.
Like the summer weather that we're having right now. No, exactly. And it's so interesting because the thought that comes to my mind is the whole conversation around burnout as well, which I get a lot with my clients. And that's the same thing. Like it is a gray, like very big spectrum of what that can look like. And
Oh my
like you
God,
said,
yeah.
when we talk about infinite statements like that as well, or yeah, finite statements
Yeah.
rather. And it's like, oh, this is what burnout looks like. And it's like serious, like adrenal fatigue, being hospitalized, et cetera, like having
Totally.
to take leave from work. Like, of course, that is burnout. But
Yeah.
ideally, there are so many steps before that that we also want to be supporting and like be really conscious of what those signs and symptoms look like so that we can like support ourselves or support
Oh,
each
yeah.
other before we get to that point because
Yeah.
like it is so gray.
Yeah. That's it. And that nuance
Hmm.
is like so individual too, right? So we
Yes.
all have a capacity to take on things that are like my version of like chaos might be like very minuscule compared to yours, but
Yeah,
that doesn't matter because the human experience is a human experience. It's not about like
absolutely.
comparing, it's about just being met exactly where you are. So,
I love that.
mhm,
The question that comes to my mind, or rather, like maybe turn in the conversation, is like, where does your head go around validating that then? Because, like, if we all are basically living in a spectrum,
mhm,
because we literally all are, like, and we're finding ourselves on that spectrum and like kind of coming to awareness as to where we're at. Like one, it takes so much awareness to even like acknowledge and recognize. And that's
mhm,
what ideally also like your resources and like your also free content, like on Instagram, for example, is really supporting is like, hey, like here's a safe space. Hey, have we thought about this today? Hey, like it's okay if you're feeling this way. But kind of this like validation in, hey, it doesn't need to look like this for you to still be able to claim this
mhm.
truth or experience for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So your question was like, how do I find
Yeah,
that?
like what's your perspective on it, I guess? Cuz like
Yeah.
again, if we have so many different spectrums of it and like for example, I'll just use the burnout example cuz I feel like
Mhm.
that's really like a good comparison. Um there's definitely conversations that I've heard where people are like, "Oh, that's not burnout." And it's
Right.
like, "No, but it is." And like saying
Uh-huh.
something like that and then someone standing next to you who's like, "Oh shit, but I'm experiencing that right now." But
Exactly.
now I feel like I can't claim that truth for myself.
Exactly. I think that it boils down to like what we had said before, that self-awareness. And I think what you just said ties into a lot of the themes that your podcast like talks about and explores is around that sort of that self-trust and about really exploring your own experience and like owning it. So I think like anything else, it's like you can't help what you don't accept. I
Yeah.
don't think that you can kind of fix things that you're not even aware that you're dealing with. And it's almost, it starts with that curiosity about your own health. It's about being able to answer questions that might be uncomfortable, you know, being like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm not feeling that great." And that is like a practice. Like I struggle with that as somebody who's like like a hoe for therapy. Like, you know, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
love all the readings. I want to like learn and explore, and I have all the vocabulary and the toolkits and the podcasts and like everything. But sometimes it's like I just have to sit down and be still and be like, okay, like what how can I dissect and like organize my feelings? And
Yeah.
so as somebody who like knows better, it's still very difficult. And I
Mhm.
think that's a big thing, even with what I'm trying to do, is to create that curiosity to be like, hey, like maybe I can give myself a little bit of grace to like think about how I'm feeling.
Mhm.
Because it's very lived experience for me too. Like,
Yeah.
so it's very like the empathetic part of me, or is like, as a human, I would want this kind of help. So maybe it would help other people.
Absolutely.
Excuse
Yeah. No, I love that. It resonates with me so, so much as well because, like, yeah, it's the human experience. Like,
me.
I think I either this was like in a podcast or probably like TikTok or something. Like, I'm like, oh, I read it in an article. No, I probably watched it on TikTok, but it was like an example of like the emotional sphere, and like it's like a heart rate monitor. Like if
Yeah.
it's flat, like we don't experience anything, and we're kind of like in that like very gruesome
Yeah.
analogy, like dead.
Mhm.
Whereas we want to be experiencing the highs and the lows, and like that ebbs and flows is basically
Yes.
like the process of life, and that's the process and the experience of being human. And so instead of like making ourselves feel wrong about that, and I think that that's where
Mhm.
like self development, or like there's like some bypassing there, spiritual bypassing as well, of like we have to be happy and positive all the time, and it's like
Yeah.
that is not the purpose. The purpose is to
Yeah.
be truthful and vulnerable with yourself, and then have the tools to nurture and hold yourself through that process.
Totally.
But I feel like that just sets the stage as well for so much like self-acceptance, also for anyone listening, being like, oh yeah, like I have ups and downs, and like that's just real, and that's just human. And like that doesn't take away what I can create in life. That doesn't create or take away any kind of value of what I can give, or like my inherent value that I already own.
Yeah.
um yeah, and it's just like so crazy how we make that like very natural, normal up and down ebbs and flow mean so much about like our worthiness in the world then.
Yeah. You just made me. I had a few conversations just this past weekend at a with uh girlfriends, talking about just kind of life stuff, right? So people who are in different phases in their lives and kind of like going through that. And I think a big um, misconception about life that I continue to learn, that most people will continue to learn, is that, yeah, like exactly what you said, there's ebbs and flows. And that when something bad happens, it just means that something brighter is on its way. So it's like, it's just the way that things go. Do you know Pema Chodron?
No.
She's a Buddhist monk. She's based in New Brunswick, but one of the principles that she said, I'll send you all her stuff. I'm obsessed with her.
Okay, yes.
The in one of her books is called Things Fall Apart, but then the principle is that, yeah, things fall apart and then they come,
Hmm.
and then they fall
Yes.
apart and then they come together. And it's like, what we need to be responsible is for allowing there to be room to grow, room to be sad,
Hmm.
room to be happy, because everything, as much as I said, like nothing's on a binary, everything kind of has to be, and then you have to kind of be the one to facilitate find meeting, right?
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, like things are going to be hard some days, but then, oh, when you have those beautiful moments and you're like, oh my God, today's so good. It's only so much better because you experienced that bad thing. Like, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you have to like, even with muscles, it's like you have to like work them and tear them apart for them to grow and like to see
Yes.
progress and like gain strength, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And then like throw a couple rest days in there too,
Yeah,
like
that's it.
ebbs and flows. Yeah. And like what just came to my mind is the whole like unattachment, which Buddhism
Mhm.
also teaches then, which is kind of the same thing of saying, okay, like when something dies, something better is coming to take its place, or when something falls apart, there's like making space for something new. And it's like, how can, like, I feel like this is the biggest lesson in life, like you also just said, and for me as well, is like this is how we find flow in life, is unattaching ourselves from the
Yeah.
things and the people and the expectations and the
God.
stories,
And
because
it's
that
hard.
is like the only thing that's creating pain.
Mhm. Exactly. It's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. It's like, and you think about it so many times, it's like, yeah, like when you let go, there's a pastor, my old church pastor, but he made an illustration where it's like you have something like with giving money, like in church. I mean, this is
Hmm.
always a controversial topic, but I get the principle around like if you're holding on to something so tight, it means that there's nothing that can come through.
Ah,
But if you open up, then it means it's like a perpetual flow, right? So
right. Oh,
things can come, then you give it away, then more can come. It's like, and every single time I think about it, creativity is like that.
yes.
Like any sort of gifting, I feel like it's like if you're open, it means that more things can flow within you, like a waterfall,
Absolutely.
not like a river, or like not
Yeah.
a pond. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much,
Mhm.
especially because I think so many of us tend to grip tighter when things get real, or when like things get tough.
Tough.
And that's when we're like trying to like control, or like make things work out the way that we think they're meant to work out. And like we're creating so much more resistance, and like also pain and stress and like anxiety, and all of this stuff just builds and builds. And there's also like, I think societally, a fear of like letting go. Like we're worried someone's going to take it from us.
Yeah.
And like the whole flow of even like abundance and like whether it's money or opportunities, like it's a flow. Like we
Yeah.
can't, we're not meant to hold on to it. We're meant to receive it, experience it, and then like release it so the next thing can come through.
Yeah.
And it's so like counterproductive then how we're taught to go through life in this
Yes.
like, okay, I need to like have such a foolproof plan and like I need to control everything. And it's like, yeah, of course you're gonna be like completely stressed if shit hits the fan when like it doesn't
100%.
go to your plan.
That's it. It's like, it's such a paradox. It's like, I mean, I blame the patriarchy and capitalism. Always boils down to that. Every time I'm like, oh, patriarchy. Um, but that's it, right? It's like being soft, but also being strong, like being
Yes.
kind, but also being like frugal, like, or like, it's just so much like contradiction and it's confusing. That's
Yeah.
basically it. And I think the bottom line is just to find your own happy. Like, it's like,
Yes.
of course, be responsible, be a nice person, have fun, but like just find your own way to satisfy
Yes.
your own desires and your like own wants and like your own needs. And
Yeah.
that's hard work because it's easier to conform and it's easier to abide and say like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. Like I said, it's like really like listening in and being like, what's and some people choose not to, and that's no judgment either. Like, I wish I could just be like, so like I've got this thought and like I just kind of like let it go away. But I'm like, no, I'm like always like ruminating and like thinking about things, and that's just
Yeah.
the cost I have to bear. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
We definitely all have like our own wiring in our brains of like how things are processed and how things go through. But at the end of the day, I think regardless of like who or where you are at, there's definitely like a power in acknowledging what's coming up as opposed
yeah.
to being like, I'm just not gonna look at that thing because like it's gonna come up in some other way then.
Yeah, always does. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing is like lessons will always keep repeating themselves until you learn them. And then even when you learn them, it'll like level up, It's like, the
Yeah.
next stage or like the next level in like game of Tetris or Super Mario.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
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 Yeah. Same shit, new level.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so this is feels like it ties in so well with like
Mhm.
the phases of transitions that I think both of us have kind of been in over the last couple months.
Yeah.
And not that you have to go into any kind of specifics, but I think that there's a lot of value in, again, like recognizing that no matter where you're at in life, no matter what you've achieved up until this point, like there are these seasons that we go through, and some are like super
Literally.
flow, like aligned, like oh my god, everything's happening, this is exactly where I want to be kind of season. And then there's the ebb seasons, which are like, okay, like this isn't what I expected, or like something just happened, or like now we have to pivot. And often I feel like those ebb seasons are really framed as failures. It's like, oh, like I was going down this path and then something shifted and therefore like I didn't get the outcome that I thought I was going to get and therefore this is a failure. And like really like reframing that to being a really beautiful opportunity, but of course that comes with so much like mental work and mindset management and like nurturing and holding yourself
Totally.
and coming back to a place where you're like, no, I trust and like I can believe in
Mm,
this. So honestly, I kind of want to just like open that up and like if there's
sure.
like if you want to share any story kind of based things or if you just kind of want to talk about the phase of transition, I'm so curious to
Totally.
hear your thoughts.
I'm not going to get too specific into this particular one, but the same sort of lesson keeps coming up in times of transition, of
Mhm.
feeling like a failure, of feeling like, oh, I put all my eggs into one specific basket and then the ball drop kind of thing. And that full transparency has been the experience that I've had in the last couple of months. And what's so interesting and what's kind of like come up in the last week or two is that like that clearing that we just talked about, like sometimes you
Mhm.
have to, like let go and like say like, oh, like I'm kind of like now looking at it as an opportunity to be like, okay, like what are the things that I haven't done in the last few years that have been put on the
Yeah.
back burner because my focus was like, or my energy was focused elsewhere. And so I'm kind of like leaning into that part of myself,
Mhm.
and not without its challenges, but what I'm trying to practice is, I mean, I say this even like to my family and friends and stuff. It's like on the day to day, sometimes I'm like in panic. Sometimes I'm like, oh, like in a transition, it's like the unknown is scary. Like it's always welcome in so many ways because I'm like, you just never know what amazing things are behind,
Mhm.
be right. But it's like, um, that's the day to day, right? But then the big picture deny is like based on all your years of living experience, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Evidence shows, in fact, that you always end up in a better state and position than you did before because
Mhm.
you know better and you're stronger and like you have that resilience that kind of like gives you more appreciation when you come to the other side of it to say like, hey, I've arrived. And again, you like know like other things will come up, maybe in not the same way. So I guess the biggest lesson for me in transition and like is just remembering that by experience that it's going to be okay and just to find those pockets of like respite and just being like, hey, it's okay, I can take a minute or I can
Mhm.
panic and it's okay, like feeling through a lot of that but then not sitting in
Yeah.
it too long where it's like um debilitating and
Yeah.
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 But it's
That's
not
super
easy. I'm not saying
interesting.
I'm, like, sitting and being like, "Ah," like, it's some days are very, very tough.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's so interesting because it is such a, um like, you have to kind of find the right balance between, like, letting yourself feel it and processing the emotions, but then
totally.
also not letting them suck you down because I've definitely
Yeah,
been there where, like, it become like, you hit a point then where obviously, like, also depends on a lot of things, but at least for me in my experience, like, you then hit a point where you kind of are like, "Okay, now it's debilitating," and then you kind of fall into the hole even
that
deeper, and then you're like, "Okay, I wanna be able to feel this, I wanna be able to honor this, but I want to." I think for me, it's like reclaim my power in this at the same
mm,
time, like make this a stance of empowerment of like, I'm feeling this. I'm like feeling the anger, I'm feeling the sadness, or I'm feeling the
totally.
frustration, feeling the grief. And I'm doing it from a place of power. Like I'm holding myself. I'm
Yeah,
not doing it from a place of like, oh my God, like I'm so confused. I'm so incapable. And then like, that's like just reflecting on that right now. I realize like that's my
mhm,
seesaw between the two.
yeah,
And yeah, it is like a balance that you wanna hit, essentially, I feel.
100%. And then also just that the balance, but the big picture, I think a lot of the time is,
Mm,
like, just knowing that you are protected, you are loved, there's so much and it might not look
yeah.
the same, but but it's going to be okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. It's like we get into the nitty-gritty, like,
Oh,
details, and we're like, that's all we can see at that point.
and sometimes that's all there is to see, right? It's like the obvious stuff, the pain of it,
Mhm.
like the brokenness of it and stuff, but like it's like yeah, but it's I
Yeah.
mean, like I'm thinking of I compare it to like say like a first heartbreak when I was like 11 or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's the thing is
Yeah.
it's the same parts of your heart and your mind
Yes.
and your gut that are like hurt, right? So
Yeah.
just remembering that it's like a natural occurrence in life and
Yeah.
it'll just make the hills sweeter.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Um, so when you're in a transition phase, when you're, like, in the phase of
Mhm.
life, how do you kind of tap back into creating belief, creating alignment, like also sometimes clarity? Because sometimes when you're in the ebb phase, you're like, I don't even know where I'm meant to be going from here. Because like, yeah, again, creating that belief when, hey, it might continue to be like this for the next couple weeks before things really start shifting and flowing again.
um I I don't have a perfect answer for you because I am going through that, but I do
Hmm.
find and what I said is I try to find ways to reconnect to what is true. Like
Hmm.
for me. So like I've been drawing a lot. I do like little cartoons and characters and that's true for me. It's a gift that I have that no one can take away from me. it's like
Mm.
almost like a secret that I have for myself too. So that's something that's very true for me. Or listening to music, especially like older music where it's like, oh, the song's still so good. That's true for me, you know? So
Yeah.
I find, instead of like trying to find ways that I can prove myself, like, yep, see, there you go again, or like you're a failure
Mm.
in this place, or some way that you can kind of like corroborate your shortcomings, is
Mhm.
finding the littlest ways to be true to yourself. Like,
Yeah.
and that kind of builds for me anyway, like self-trust. And then it's like, okay, because this is true, then this is also true. Like, I think a lot of what I'm dealing with personally is like doubting my capabilities within
Mhm.
writing, doubting my capabilities within creating, feeling
Yeah.
like I'm not qualified, I guess you could say. And also, yeah, just training myself to be like, that might not be true, but I'm going to do it anyway. you
Mm.
you know what I mean? It's like, I don't have to be
Yeah.
qualified, and I don't know that anybody is really, but it's like the willpower to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And um yeah, so like I said, I don't have a perfect answer, but I think it's just finding those little things. Like,
Yeah.
for me, that a lot of that is just very creative ventures.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds to me like it's really focusing on like how can you create pleasure for yourself outside
Yeah,
of like productivity or achievement of
yeah.
any kind. It's just like, okay, come back to you doing things that make you feel good.
Yeah, there's no objective
Yeah.
to most of it. It's not like I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna sell this cartoon," or excuse
Yeah.
me, I'm gonna, like, do anything. I'm just gonna, like, probably put it in a drawer, but it's just like, the exercise of just, like, releasing, um,
Mhm.
and also just, yeah, like I'm saying, showing myself, like, no matter what happens,
Yeah.
that I still have this thing that, like, is mine, you know? And,
Mhm.
everybody has something. Like,
Yeah.
everybody has their something, and I think that, like, exercising that is a good way to remember that, like, you're uniquely gifted and that you, have something to offer that no one else
Absolutely.
has. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, really coming back to like grounding yourself
Mhm.
in your inherent worth.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And to
Amazing.
your exact point, it has nothing to do with productivity or, like, showing up for anybody but yourself, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that. I'm gonna try and like wrap us up so that we don't take too long. And I have my like final fuck it energy question. But
yeah,
before, do you have anything else that you really want to touch on that you feel like we didn't talk about, like relating to this topic, relating to mental
yeah,
health, relating to your journey, anything in it, anything and everything?
totally. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, and I've said this actually, I was on a panel back in February, just around, like when you hear people's stories, sometimes it's like they're so heavy, and they're that things are life is really hard, even when it's so good and so beautiful, and it's so um just, there's pockets of magic and like laughter, and like, sometimes I'll be just watching TV and I'm like, this show is just so good. Like, someone wrote this. Acting so good. Like, do you know what I mean? I just like kind of get into like my own like sort of like zone of like appreciation.
Hmm.
It's just, I think one big thing is just remembering that, like, we are like in this together. I think that, like, it, like whatever you're going through, and I think a lot of it is the fear of expressing it, is what we had said, or what you had said earlier, around like the expectation, or like not saying it
Hmm.
correctly, or it being so big that like then it becomes a problem, or being so small that you shouldn't even mention it at all. But it's like, if we can all operate from a place that um we can understand, like, you can be hurting and I can be hurting, you can be happy and I can be happy, and
Hmm.
one has nothing to do with the other, and
Yeah.
everything to do with the other at the same time. I think that will create like a really dope place to live. And that's kind of like what I'm hoping to do with Forward Ever. If it isn't the place, it's just that one page on Instagram, and it's the people that are in
Hmm.
my life and the community that I belong to. And yeah, so that's one big thing, is like, just everybody has their shit, and we
Yeah.
just need to be kind.
Yeah. I love that. Just
Yeah.
putting everything into perspective
Oh
again.
god, yeah. Every time. And sometimes
Over and over.
some days have your selfish days. Be like, I don't care about anybody else. You know,
Yeah,
I'm gonna sit on my couch and I'm gonna wallow and be upset, and that's okay too. Just
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
perspective.
Yes. I think you can do that with so much love to the people around you because it's probably helping them as well sometimes for like you to just prioritize yourself and be selfish and like because then
But
you can come back and you're ready to hold space
that
for someone else again.
yeah, no point in like bottling it up and like it like metastasizing or like just going into like a like you doing something irrational, right?
Yeah,
So feel what you need to feel and then hopefully come out of it feeling better.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so final question, fuck it energy. So I ask everyone this question,
Yeah.
and it's all about what is your fuck it energy in your life right now. And just to recap, fuck it energy is flow energy. So this isn't
Mm.
like negative, like explicit, like whatever. This is like saying fuck it to the status quo, fuck it to any kind of like pressures or
Mhm.
stressors or structures that really stand in your way of you being in your true essence, you being in your authentic self and in your desires of what you want to create in your life and stepping into flow. So is there something specific in your life right now that you're saying, I'm like covering this up in fuck it energy
Yeah.
and just doing my thing?
Yes. I anything that meets me with opposition, I say fuck it to. So I find like, and it's around the same thing with flow. I found every single thing, if I really, really think about it in life, every single thing that I've desired or wanted or worked towards, or planned for, that was meant to be in my life always came easily, right?
Mm,
Not without like I'm saying, not without hard work, not without planning, not without, like sleepless nights per se, but
for
I
sure.
wasn't like a like, oh my god, like it's just there's like a wall and I'm being like I'm up against something. It's always come to me. So
Mm-hmm.
my bucket energy is remembering that like what's meant for me will make its way to me. But what I know, but what I need to do is be ready for it to come to me. So it's like
Mm,
coming back to the things that I really love, the ways that I can like nourish my spirit, like to go back to my faith, go back to my laughter, like enjoying the sun, because you can't meet anything that's not ready to meet you. So,
yes,
but you'll always be met. It's like what you desire desires you too. Like what
absolutely.
you want already exists within you. It's not like you can't have it. It's just about being ready when it does come.
Yeah,
So that's my fucking energy is like don't focus on the things that you can't control. Don't focus on the things that like don't want you, like want what wants you, right? So
yeah.
yeah, that's it.
I fucking love that. That's
Thanks.
so great. It's so much of that alignment of just like, this is what
Mhm.
I desire. I'm putting myself in alignment with it. And it sounds to me like practicing, like being in receiving mode, just being like,
That's it.
I'm trusting, I'm
Yeah,
doing the work. Obviously, like we need to take aligned action. We need to be doing things, but
that's
I'm going to be in a place of like also worthiness. Like I know that I get to have this thing. So like, I'm not worried about it.
it. And if it doesn't come or like arrive to me in the way that I think it should or that I want to, that my belief is that something exceedingly better is on its way.
Yes.
Like it's never going to be worse, it's going to be better. That's like a promise from God, like that's like a thing, right? So
Yes.
just trusting that, just do you, and let let go of the rest. It'll figure itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
that's
just got chills through my whole body.
yeah, yeah, it's true, like just it's a daily practice. It's a
Yes.
minute by minute practice,
Yeah,
and it also
absolutely.
means it frees you up for like the other things. Like if you're not worrying about the next thing, like then you can enjoy the moment.
Yes,
So yeah.
100%. I love that. Oh my goodness. Okay, so many things. And I'm like, okay, don't ask another question. We're going to wrap this up
No, we could
now.
just do this all day.
I know we
Talking.
could just talk all day. But I'm going to wrap it up here. Honestly, if anyone is listening and you're like, I want to hear more, I want to hear more from Danai, let us know. She can come
Yes.
back on again and we can talk about something else, another perspective, another lens of all of this. And let the good people know where they can find you.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on Instagram. So it's forward ever backward never is the name, but it's the opposite on Instagram. So it's never, oh my god, never backward ever forward. The other handle wasn't available. So, but
Ugh,
if you just search that on Instagram, like either way, which way it'll come up. Yeah.
I'll put everything in the show notes and
Thanks.
as well because I'm like, yeah,
I,
that's a tough one.
find me.
classic Instagram
I know.
being the way that it is.
Every like few weeks I like Instagram or like I DM the person who has that handle. I'm like, hey, you haven't posted since 2015. Let me
Oh
have.
my god,
Yeah,
that is so great.
I know. I wish it was like GoDaddy where you could just like buy it, but
Yes,
just luck.
I feel that. I feel that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. This was
Thank
such
you
an
for
amazing
having me. So
conversation.
great.
I love your energy. I love what you're doing, and I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to continue to kind of like be on this journey together, be
Yes,
in our communities
I'm
together
so
and
stoked. Yes.
see where it goes.
Awesome. Okay, I'll text you later.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.